It's hard to comprehend. The number, the staggering number of marble monuments. Thousands of them. Each cross standing in formation, just as the men whose names are etched here once did. These are Americans. You'll find them buried near the battlefields where they lost their lives, in the rolling hills of Italy, the hidden fields of France, and 24 other hallowed cemeteries all around the world. Those rare places where the American flag flies over foreign soil, to honor the sacred spot where heroes rest. About an hour outside Nice, France, you'll find a quiet cemetery in the middle of a small village, a place relatively few Americans ever visit, even though 860 U.S. heroes are buried here. Thankfully, Alison Lubirsa is here to watch over them.
Those are my special heroes.
Alison is an associate at the Rhone American Cemetery, and she's racing against the clock to find out everything she can about every soldier interred here.
On my bucket list, right up there in place number 1 is, when I retire in a couple of years' time, is to have the photo and the story of every single person that's here.
Think you'll do it?
Yep, I'm going to do it.
But there are 60 or so heroes buried here she is especially curious about.
They're the unknown soldiers. These ones are really special to me because their parents didn't know what happened to them. I put myself in the place of their mums. I'm sad because I love to tell the stories of the people that are here, but with them I cannot tell their story because I don't know what happened to them.
No one does, and instead, each cross carries this phrase.
These are the 13 worst little words in the English language. They really are. Here rests in honoured glory a comrade in arms, known but to God.
From time to time, Alison still meets the relatives and friends of those buried here more than 70 years ago, and hears new stories. But it is her goal to hear them all.
So they're never ever forgotten. Ever.
She is one of dozens of people scattered all over the world who make it their mission to tell the stories of American boys who died overseas during World War II.
When I see the crosses, I do see a story behind everyone. It is important to me because it reminds me of the cost of my freedom today.
They work with the American Battlefield Monuments Commission, looking after more than 24 U.S. burial grounds in 16 different countries all over the globe, where more than 200,000 American service members are buried.
It's an independent agency of the federal government, and it maintains 25 American cemeteries, and they're all overseas, and 27 memorials.
Some cemeteries are more well-known than others, like the Normandy American Cemetery, perched on a bluff atop Omaha Beach, where our boys landed on D-Day and changed the face of World War II. On the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, there's a Sicily-Rome American cemetery where you'll find acre after acre of white crosses. These men died in critical campaigns during the war, landing at Anzio, liberating Sicily, fighting all over the Italian countryside. Yet, even though this picturesque place sits just 40 miles outside Rome, this attraction garners far fewer American tourists than that ancient city. Among those buried here is Charlie Ross, who was shot down in his B-25 and buried here in 1945.
And I have his picture right above my bed, so I see him a lot. And I've dreamed about him.
Yet his sister Leela, now 93 years old, back home in the States, has never even seen in person that white marker that honors her hero, whose death devastated her family.
Especially my mother. He was her first child, so that was the hardest for her. It was hardest for my mother and my dad, too. And whenever they would talk about him, my dad would just tear up.
It is a tragedy so few loved ones get to visit these final resting places. Pictures and video of these far-flung fields of honor will have to do.
I would imagine that their families might be sad that they're not able to visit, but there's, you know, them being all together here and honored in this way, I think is a really good thing.
In Luxembourg, among the smallest countries in Europe, sits a big cemetery where 5,000 of our World War II fighters are buried. Many gave their lives in the Battle of the Bulge. This one, of course, is the marker that garners the most attention here. But General Patton is not the only reason Americans visit.
It just reminds me of all the folks who gave their lives in the service of their country.
To me, it's a major part of American history.
For me, it's really sombering to walk through them and to see the ages of a lot of the people that were here. It's just hard to see them and to know that they're so far from home and that they never got to return even though they were so young.
In the rolling hills just outside Florence, Italy, sits the Florence American Cemetery, where 4,400 headstones cast a shadow in the afternoon sun. These are the men who fought the Germans in northern Italy. Many of those buried here are members of the U.S. Army's famous 10th Mountain Division, that ragtag group of skiers, most of them East Coast college kids, who were thrown together and sent to the mountains of Colorado to train for alpine warfare.
Camp Hill was a tough place to just exist because of the weather conditions. You ever try sleeping out in the snow when you're told it's 40 below zero?
These guys did the impossible. We took 3,000 trained skiers and another 5,000 volunteers and built one of the finest fighting forces in World War II.
They were really kind of glamorized in the media. Pictures were taken and put on Life magazine to, show you could be doing this too. You could be skiing, join the Army.
But then the reality of war set in. Sure, they helped defeat the Germans in Italy and end the war, but the victory came at a tremendous cost.
Although they were only in Italy for, 5 months or so, they had some of the highest casualty rates of any division.
Unfortunately, we lost 1,000 soldiers over there. Another 4,000 guys were wounded, so 5,000 out of the 15,000 that we took over were killed or injured in combat.
Melanie Loveland's grandfather was among those killed and buried at Florence.
If I could tell him one thing, it's going to make me cry, but I would tell him that I'm proud of him, and I'm proud to be his granddaughter. And I know my mom was proud of him too. She was proud to be his daughter. And if I could ask him one thing, I think I would just want to know about him as a person, because I never got that chance.
These days, their memory is kept alive by the few Americans who visit their final resting place, thousands of miles from home.
It's very inspiring. It's very emotional, and I'm glad to see such a beautiful resting place for our troops.
And by their surviving brothers in arms from the 10th Mountain Division.
I've kept these up here for a few years, and then my wife said, "Get them out of here."
Guys like Richard Over, who may be 93 years old now, but still sees it as his responsibility to share the stories of his fellow soldiers.
And to honor those fellas who didn't come back. The legacy, I feel that those fellows who didn't come back, they would want us to tell the story and tell it well.
Each Jewish American cemetery overseas is more stunning than the one before it. Like this one, Netherlands American Cemetery, where amid these 8,300 monuments, one marble cross stood out to us. Major General Maurice Rose, a leader who you'd always find at the front of the fighting lines.
He was a big deal. He was known as a real soldier's soldier.
A guy so important, you'd find him hanging out with General Eisenhower. Here he is advising President Truman. General Rose was killed just before the war ended.
Their Jeep was rammed by a tank and pinned down, and General Rose went for his weapon, either to throw it down and surrender or to keep fighting, but one of the German tank crew shot him.
His death made headlines all over the country. He was the highest-ranking Jewish officer killed in the war.
When he was killed, it was a great loss. General Eisenhower sent condolences to his wife.
Back in his hometown of Denver, Colorado, his legacy lives on to this day. They named a hospital after him.
His mother actually participated in the groundbreaking ceremony. General Eisenhower came out to lay the cornerstone, and by 1949, the very first baby was born at what we call today Rose Medical Center.
4,000 babies are now born every year in the building that bears his name. A hero who rests in Europe, but still makes his country proud every day. From Netherlands to Belgium, from Italy to France, in 16 foreign countries all around the world, you'll find these pristine fields of honor, the burial grounds of tens of thousands of warriors who never made it home from the battle. Sure, few of us will ever get to see, in person, those faraway places where they gave their lives and are still honored today. But we can salute them from afar and thank them.
This is the reason that we're able to be who we are today, is because these gentlemen believed so strongly in us, in their future, in our future, that they gave their lives for it.
Thank them for changing the world we live in, for the better, more than 70 years ago, and changing the course of history forever.
It's special because it's kind of like a home away from home for all of our soldiers that died here in World War II.
And we can be glad their memory lives in these sacred shrines where heroes rest.